Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Old School Scares. Today we're going to do our next series of reviews, and today we're going to do Nightmare on Elm Street. One of my favorite horror movies growing up as a kid. It was really the first movie that I got into. I love Friday the 13th probably more now. It's probably my favorite series, but at the time, when Nightmare on Elm Street came out, I was like 10 or 11 years old, the first movie, and it scared the hell out of me. Freddy was this great, iconic character. You know, Michael and Jason didn't talk. They weren't as cool at the time, right? And you saw Freddy, and he was just a different entity. And I absolutely loved the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. So I'm very excited to share this one with you. We're gonna go through all of the original movies, right? So we have 1 through 6, New Nightmare, Freddy vs. Jason, and the remake. And we're gonna go through and cover all of them and let you know what we think of worst to best. And I will tell you, this is a strange series with diminishing returns because I actually think the first 4 movies are really good. And then the last 2 are just really, really bad. And the ones in the middle, in all honesty, are incredibly mediocre. So I'm very excited to share this with you. Like we do before, we'll kind of talk about the movie, what's good about it, what's bad. We'll tell you when it came out. And then we'll also maybe give you the best death scene in each movie. I've done that in every movie, kind of the scariest part of each movie. So with that being said, we're going to jump right in and hit our bottom movie. All right, we're going to start with a real piece of crap. The worst movie in the franchise. It is Nightmare on Elm Street Part 6, Freddys Dead. Saw this in the theater when it came out. This movie came out in 1991, the year I graduated high school. I remember seeing it in the theater. It was 3D, it was advertised, and it was not good. There's just not a lot great about this movie. Unfortunately, too, it's got a decent cast, and some of that cast is wasted, right? Lisa Wilcox, Yaphet Kotto, obviously Robert Englund coming back. But it's just not a good movie. There's just not a lot to recommend. It retcons, again, a lot of the stuff that the movies did along. In parts 4, 5, and 6 did a lot of, kind of shoehorning some mythology for Freddy in there. But 6 was the worst, right? Freddy, spoilers ahead, but Freddy's killed all the kids in Elm Street, so now he's trying to get out of the town. It's just not a good movie. And then you find out, again, one of the main characters has been his daughter all along. That's never been talked about in the movie. It's just not a very good movie. There's not a whole lot to like about it. Freddy's full wisecrack mode. There's not a lot of scares, and it's literally not a very scary movie. I will tell you, though, I think there's one very good, effective scene in the movie, and it's Carlos's death. Carlos has a hearing aid. Freddy, he drops it in the boiler room once he falls asleep. Freddy gives it back to him, and it has like this incredible, like 1,000 times capability. So everything's very painful. One pin drop is agonizing for Carlos, and Freddy, sticks a giant Q-tip through his ear, and you see the gore and the viscera, and he puts the hearing aid back in. He drops all these pins. He's scratching the board, and Carlos' head just basically explodes. And it's a really good, gory, effective scene. So for a really bad movie, I would tell you that's by far the best and scariest scene in the movie. But it's not a movie I would recommend to you. It's just not a very good movie. So we're gonna move on to 8th. In 8th place, we have Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child. Holy cow, what can I say about this movie, right? 1989. This movie's just a disaster. It's slightly better than 6, because 6 just is all over the place. And 6 has a lot of cameos by Tom Arnold and Roseanne, Alice Cooper. There's so much stuff in 6 they're just trying to jam in to make cool. 5 is just a bad movie. It's just the continuity isn't there. It's not great. There's, again, not a lot to root for in the movie. The deaths are pretty watered down in 5. Again, there's some of the creativity to have in the earlier movies, or even some of the later movies, the deaths just aren't there, and it's just not a great movie. So not particularly a big fan, but there is one really kind of effective, scary death in the movie, and it's going to be Dan's death. When Dan's on his motorcycle and falls asleep, and Freddy starts to basically take all the parts of the bike, and they go into Dan's hands and his arms, and he becomes one with the motorcycle. That's actually pretty chilling. It's actually really good special effects. A lot of good gore in that. It definitely is a more of a creepy, effective scene, so I do kind of dig that scene in the movie. And I would tell you, out of everything, that's probably the best, most effective scene. But it's not a great movie. So not a great movie by any means. Not something I would recommend highly. But that is a pretty good, effective scene in that movie. We're gonna go to number 7. Number 7 is gonna be the remake, and this one kills me because I would tell you, just like the Friday the 13th series, were the last 2 movies I won't watch again. I feel the same way on the Nightmare series. 5 and 6, I just won't watch. I just think they're crap. I don't enjoy them. I don't want to watch them. So if they're on, I'm skipping them. The remake, I'm kind of on the fence. Jackie Earle Haley did, I actually think, as good a job as he can. And I would tell you that one of the most scary Freddys in the whole series, right? I think he doesn't play it for laughs. There's some one-liners in the movie, but he is genuinely creepy, and there's just kind of this whole child molester angle that is actually really kind of gross and creepy in the movie too. So I think he's actually very good in the movie. I think the movie's well made. It's shot well. It looks good. There's a lot of stuff in there, but again, it was kind of an unnecessary remake. It doesn't do a ton. It came out in 2010. It's the last Elm Street movie as of right now, and I would just tell you that it's just not, again, nothing that blows you away. You watch it. There's a bunch of scenes. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the Psycho remake, not shot for shot like Psycho was, and they try to introduce like these micro naps, which are kind of a cool concept. But again, not a great movie when you go through it. And I would tell you that the best death in there, I want to say it's Dennis's death. It's the first death in the movie. You're in the diner. It's grimy. It's late at night. And, Dennis falls asleep, and all of a sudden you see Freddy attack him. But then no one in the diner can see him, and he's by himself, and he slices his own throat. And it's really deep and nasty. That's probably the best, most effective scare in the movie, and it's pretty well done. What I would tell you next is going to be 2003's Freddy vs. Jason from the Friday the 13th series. I like Freddy vs. Jason. You can see I've got Freddy and Jason up here. I actually think it's not a bad movie. It's fun. It's entertaining. I laugh when I watch it. Again, it's something if it's on, I would definitely watch again. The first 2/3 of the movie aren't great. The last third of the movie, I think, is phenomenal. There's, the fight between Freddy and Jason is great. It's so over the top. It's kind of like WWF of that time frame. Man, they go over the top. They're killing each other. They're smashing each other. It's just a good, well-done action, horror, comedy that I enjoy and I'll watch every time it's on. As far as scares go, though, it's not a very scary movie. It tries, again, a little too hard to be meta and cool. There is one scary scene, and I do think I said the same thing on the Freddy vs. Jason on the Friday the 13th. It is Mark's death. I think Mark's death is really the actor who plays Mark just does a great job of getting to that character. Somebody who's just been terrorized by Freddy for a long time. He's the only one that remembers, and when Freddy brings him back in, it's a really good, effective, scary death, and I would say it's the best death scene, the best scare in Freddy vs. Jason, which is overall a pretty fun movie, right? All right, so now we're going to get into number 5, right? So the 5th best Nightmare on Elm Street movie, which is going to be Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master. Kind of continuing on from the theme from Part 3, pretty good movie. This movie came out in 1988. I like this movie a lot. I think, again, it's, it takes all kind of the mythology of Part 3 and carries it over to 4. It's fun. It's a good movie. It's well done. Some of the best deaths in the movie. Really, Freddy's pretty nasty in this movie. Like, he's still scary. There's more one-liners, and we've definitely moved on from where he was at the beginning. But Freddy's good in this movie. He's scary. There's some great stuff. To me, there's only one thing that this movie, I always remember when I think about it. It's Debbie's death, which is that where she's working out. She's bench pressing. Freddy comes in. He snaps her arms, and she's terrified of bugs. And all of a sudden, her body just starts to transform. Her arms fall off. She has these giant roach arms. And then she's in this roach motel and Freddy just squeezes it and squirts all of her guts everywhere. That, to me, by far, is the goriest, scariest, funkiest scene in the movie. And I think it's so well done. The special effects are really good. So I actually really like that scene quite a bit. And I think it's very, very well done. I really like this movie. And I think, again, from where we're going from here, anything really Freddy vs. Jason forward, I actually enjoy the movies quite a bit. So I actually think it's very well done, and I do like this movie quite a bit. We're going to go to next. So number 4 for me is Freddys Revenge from 1985. So the second of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. What an interesting movie this is. There's actually a ton of really cool stuff. There's a documentary called Scream Queens around this, and it talks about like this movie being the first really gay horror movie, kind of openly gay horror movie, and there's a ton of stuff that go into it. Some of the sadomasochism with the coach, some of the homoerotic scenes between him and his buddy in the scene. It's just a well done movie, but I would tell you in this movie there's a lot of cool stuff. This is the second scariest Freddy in the series to me. I think it just edges out the remake's version of Jackie Earle Haley. I think Freddy's scary in this. I think there's not a lot of joking around. I think the movie takes itself very seriously, and it's good, and it's better for that. Being serious actually helps this movie a lot be better than what it actually potentially could be. There's some demerits in the movie. There's a lot of Freddy in the real world, which doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. The whole pool party scene is kind of a shit show. It doesn't make a ton of sense, but it's not terrible. But I would tell you that I think the best in this movie is there's a real sense of, I talked about it in my Thing review, where there's a real sense of cold in that movie. There's a real sense of sweltering heat in this movie, which I like. You know, everything's just hot in the house. Everybody's sweaty. Everything's melting. And it really lends this sense of unease as they're making the movie. But I would tell you, for me, the most scary scene in this movie is really kind of where Jesse realized what's going on with him and Freddy. And you'll see Jesse's sweating, and Freddy comes to him, and Freddy takes off the top of his head and he exposes his brain. And he tells him how he's going to help him get his friends, and he's got the body, and Freddy's got the brains. And I think it's just a really good, effective, scary scene that's very well done in this movie. So Nightmare on Elm Street 2, I really like it quite a bit, and I think it gets a bad rap. It's a way better movie than it gets credit for. So now we're going to get in our top three. Top three for me, number 3 would be Wes Craven's A New Nightmare. I love this movie. I think it's so well done. I think there's a lot of great scares in it. I think it takes Freddy very seriously again. You know, having the characters and everybody in the movie, right? I mean, you know, whether it's Wes Craven, Bob Shea, Heather Langenkamp, Robert Englund. Again, all the characters are playing, essentially movie versions of themselves. And they're bringing the mythology back to bringing Freddy into this dream demon who's been kind of held captive for this movie. And this movie came out in '94. Like I said, it's a couple of years before Scream. But I think this is really where Wes Craven found his voice again back in the horror space and did a great job. And I think this movie is just excellent from beginning to end. There's a lot of great scenes in this movie, some that are genuinely very scary. But I would tell you the one that for me is the best scene in the movie is Julie's death. And it's going to come back to one of the best, I think it's probably one of the best deaths in the whole series. But Julie's death is an homage to part 1 where Tina's death, right? Where, you know, on the ceiling, the Freddy demon entity has her up there. She can't see him. Only Heather Langenkamp's son can see him, and she sees what's going on. Freddy's a lot darker in here. The finger gloves are actually part of his body now. He's got this dark trench coat, darker clothing. The burns a little bit more realistic. So there's just a lot of really good, true scares in this movie. And I would tell you that I believe The New Nightmare is actually, again, an absolutely great movie. And the only 2 movies that to me beat it would be Nightmare on Elm Street. For the second best movie to me is Nightmare on Elm Street Part 1, the original. Great movie. This movie is interesting. The reason I have it as number 2 and not number 1 will make sense in just a second. But when I think about this movie, it's really a movie that really hasn't found its voice completely with Freddy. Freddy, again, there's great scares. There's some really cool stuff. But again, this movie was kind of, setting the tone for what Freddy would be later on. And it's really very good. Freddy is scary in this movie. There's some genuinely scary parts in this movie. I would tell you that all the scares, to me the best scares really do center around Tina. And Tina, both her death and the scene in the school where Nancy sees Tina's body in the body bag with all the snakes and bugs being dragged down the hall. Both of those scenes as a kid scared the hell out of me. And I think they're both incredibly well done. I am a giant fan of what they did with this movie. And this, again, genuinely scary Freddy, cool mythology, setting the stage for what was going on later on, likable characters, Johnny Depp's start of his career, John Saxon, who was a huge Hollywood star at the time. Just a really good movie. This movie's only let down by a couple things. There's some really weird effects in this movie. Kind of the long arms of Freddy are really strange. And then the puppet scene where Nancy's mother gets pulled through the window at the end is just a disaster. That's such a shitty scene. It's such a bad special effect. But again, I won't let you take that away from it. I think it's just a great movie overall. And it sets the pace for what this franchise could be and would be later on. And again, a really good Freddy. To me, though, the most close to a perfect movie you have on the Nightmare on Elm Street series is going to be a Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, The Dream Warriors. And again, you'll see my top 3. It's kind of the Nancy trilogy, all the movies that she was the major part of. 3 is just great across the board. Again, outstanding cast. Lawrence Fishburne, Patricia Arquette, obviously Heather Langenkamp coming back. Really likable characters, people that are smart. This sense of dread from all these kids that are having the same experience at the asylum. Nancy coming back and trying to protect the kids from Freddy because she knows truly what he is. Just a great movie across the board. Tons of really great scenes throughout this movie. Great death scenes, great battles with Freddy. Nancy's fight with Freddy. All the different things that go into this movie are absolutely outstanding. But there's one death in this movie that stands out to me. And again, as a kid, so this movie came out in '87. I would have been I want to say I was 13 when this came out. And man, that puppet scene where Freddy pulls out Philip's veins and he's walking him like a marionette through the insane asylum, and then he just cuts it and he falls to his death. Holy crap, that scene scared the hell out of me as a kid. I thought it was so creepy, The effects are so good. It's so well done. The acting is amazing. Again, I can watch this movie anytime it's on. I absolutely love it every time. Again, I think it's just such a well-made movie. I think it's the best of the bunch in the series. So that's our rankings and reviews. What I love in the comments is to get your point of view on these Nightmare on Elm Street movies, how you rank them. You know, what's your favorite Elm Street movie? Do you have the same ones as me? Do you like some of the ones I don't like, or do some of the ones I have a little controversial? I know 2 for a lot of people is a lot lower on the list, but I really do enjoy it. I think it's a very good movie. With that being said, you know, for December, the goal will be we want to do 2 more ranking series. So I think we're going to try to do The Evil Dead as well as Scream. And then I'd like to do 1 more director comparison. And I think we're going to do a Nightmare on Elm Street versus Scream from Wes Craven and talk about that. And then maybe try to get a Christmas horror movie in before the end of the year. So as always, if you've had a chance to, you know, check out the channel, thank you. If you have not had a chance to subscribe, please do so in the bottom. You know, we appreciate any of the support. You know, we've done a bunch of cool stuff so far. Thanks for checking out the channel. We hope you have an awesome day. And as always, stay scary.